I have with me in the studio here in Abuja Network studio to look at the World Press Freedom Day. Like I said earlier, today is the third day in the month of May, and it's the World Press Freedom Day. I told you guys earlier that we have this problem of people not celebrating the media, people not protesting, or rather going out there to protect the rights of the media, except we fight for ourselves. And that's the problem that we've been facing for a very long time. But I just hope that we will get to that point as a nation where we understand that the media also have the right to be heard. Because there are so many things. If you look at the crisis in most part of the world, before it gets to your domain, the media are always there in the front line, even though most of you might not really understand how it works. How do you get this information that there is war in Sudan, there is war in different parts of the world? Is somebody put his life at stake to ensure that you get that information? And how free is the press in Nigeria is what we'll be looking at this morning. And I have with me a journalist, a seasoned journalist for that. He has been in the profession for a very long time. He's a media consultant also. Festus Ejiregene Fifian is our guest for this morning from our Abuja Network today. Very good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Dominic.
Yeah, let's begin with, I normally ask this question each time we celebrate this day. How free is the Nigerian media in terms of press freedom?
Okay, first and foremost, while you were introducing the topic, you talked about how we fight for others, and most times nobody talks about our own. And also listening to the doctor from the Benin Network Center, I would actually tell you that we are not so different from medical doctors. They take care of everybody, and sometimes it's difficult for their own need. I don't think you have ever envisaged that a doctor can be sick and he will be hospitalized like every other person. It's the same thing with the work of the journalist. And if you see anybody that is trained, that is a seasoned journalist, that knows the onion, like we say, you will realize that you wake up in the morning, everything you think about is how to get the information out there, how to keep your people informed. And sometimes you even do it without having to consider the dangers that are involved and what you go through. And sometimes when everybody, when there's something going wrong, you see those that should know telling you that you are no longer doing investigative journalism. You are supposed to do this, you're supposed to keep us informed, and you're supposed to do a lot of things. It's a thankless job. And when you were talking about people appreciating what we do, most of the time nobody appreciates what we do, because some scholars that describe us as muckrakers. We go out there to bring out what people want to hide. Aside that is public relations, it's no longer journalism. Now, looking at Nigeria, funny enough, in my first degree, the project or thesis that we talk about, I actually wrote about the laws we have in this country as far as press freedom is concerned. And I realized that Nigeria as a country, when it comes to press freedom, the country is doing very, very well. But the only thing that we see is a lot of, let me use the word carefully now, draconian approaches that are not in line with any law. Any politician feel offended, or a friend to a politician, or a brother or sister to a politician feels offended because of one or two reports from a journalist or a media house, they just clamp you down without having to go through the law. So what they do is actually impunity and not using the laws of the land to actually try journalists. So journalism in Nigeria, press freedom in Nigeria, to a very large extent, is okay, but you have people that abuse processes to make sure that they put the journalists down, to intimidate others and put that fear in the mind of others that if you do this, this is what is going to happen to you. And some of them will tell you boldly that even before your colleagues will come and make noise about it, I will make sure that you suffer very well, and next time you will not think about doing something like that. So what we have is an abuse of the process, really, not using the law to fight.
Well, before we get to the laws that are supposed to do what is right, but you said Nigerian press freedom, to a large extent we've done well, but some persons there also will really not agree with you in terms of access to information that journalists need to get for them to inform persons outside. Can you share light on that? Have we been able to really work on that? Do we really have access to info, especially when it comes to government coffers? Do we really get the right informations? How free are the informations we get from the government's coffers?
Okay, thank you very much for that. And like I said, journalism, as it were, or let me say real journalism, is your ability to put out there what people are trying to hide. Anything outside that is public relations. Now, if you notice very well, nobody, in my photojournalism class, I remember very, very well, one of my prof was the one that was given to me as a beat. And if you are in the profession, you will know what I mean by a beat. That is a place I'm supposed to cover. And he woke up early in the morning, and the first thing he saw was me with my camera. Not this kind of cameras, you have digital camera. Then it was the one you do negative and you go develop. And I was shooting him. The man was angry. And this was the person that has been teaching me to be fearless. He has been telling me to be bold. He has been telling me to be to damn the consequences and do what I'm supposed to do. So what am I trying to bring out from that short story is that the government, as it were, you are trying to bring out what they are trying to hide. So you will not get it on the platter of gold. Even in these developed societies where they tell us that freedom of information is there, you don't also get it very, very rosy. Forget about what they tell you in movies and what people watch. Sometimes they feel the way it is in the movies is what it is in, my children will say, real life. It is not like that. It is not left for you as a journalist that knows what you're doing to have what we now call sources. The sources that you have in these places, your ability to network, your ability to have people that will trust you to give you information that you will not just go and misuse or use to blackmail people. It's not left for you to have these sources, then you use them. The only thing that we have, the Freedom of Information Act that we are operating in Nigeria, a few of us, the attitude we use in getting this thing, it look as if you are investigating someone and you are telling the person to give you what you will use to nail him or her. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work that easily. So we can do more as journalists by having the right sources, and you cannot also separate the attitude of an average civil servant in Nigeria from the responses you also get from freedom of information requests that you make to an agency. How long does it take you to get a file signed in Nigerian civil service? How long does it take you to get things done in the civil service? So you cannot separate that. But in the actual fact, we can improve. But we have to say these things the way they are. Because what I've also noticed is that a few people, while I was studying, most of these things I've been prepared for it, that you are not going to get it that rosy. You are not going to get it sweet the way people envisage that is going to be. But you have to be persistent, you have to stand your ground, and you have to follow the process. For example, there are people that follow stories for as long as 10 years. For them to be able to unearth what is hidden, and they will do it. So if you are thinking that journalism is what you do now, and you get the result, you might be very, very wrong. So these are the little issues that we have as far as the access to information is concerned in Nigeria. Yeah,
you also talked about how we both agreed on the fact that Nigerians we are not being celebrated as journalists, just like the medical doctor there is crying his plight, and everybody will say, wow, we need to attend to the medical doctor so that they will be at the hospitals to attend to sick patients. But now let's look at the contribution of journalism to national development. Now we are enjoying this democracy. So many persons will tell you that without the media, democracy will not have survived or getting to the level it is as it stands now. Going back from the very beginning of this present democracy we are enjoying, how will you assess the media so far?
Okay, thank you very much. It's not just democracy that will suffer without the freedom of the press. Every other freedom is somehow subjected to the freedom of the press, in line with Article 19 of 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And if you look at that Universal Declaration, freedom of expression, and what do you do as a journalist? You help people express, you shape in their opinion, you inform them, you help them take dedicated and decisive decisions that has to do with their life. So anybody telling you that freedom of the press is just only about democracy is not telling you the truth. Every other freedom is under the freedom of expression, which we are using now, freedom of the press. Now, let me tell you, without freedom of the press or freedom of expression, there is no democracy and justice. And if you look at Nigeria, for the past, since we came back to democracy in 1999 again, you will realize that in all fairness to the government, it is getting better. We came from a military period where it is a taboo for you to look at a general and you ask a question, and you know most of their files are usually considered secret, and they also tell you that in line with national security. I remember that word very well. Once you do anything, Dominic, what is your name? I can't tell you my name because of national security. And the first person that we have as our president under the democratic dispensation coming back again in 1999 was a retired military man, Olusegun Obasanjo, the chief himself. Now, you also realize that over time, there are a lot of things that would have come up, and we are improving, but it can get better. Like I said in my opening remark, one of the challenges we have these days is we have powerful individuals, not necessarily institutions. So individuals they just believe that they can pick you. The aim is not really to prosecute you as a journalist if they feel that you have done anything that is injurious to their personality. The aim is to torture you. The aim is to punish you. The aim is to make you feel pain. So whenever you want to go into such thing again, you will think twice about what you will feel, and at the end of the day, you might be deceived not to do so much. So democracy coming back, freedom of the press since 1999, it is getting better, but there's still so much space to be covered, because we have to look for a way to clear the wing of these powerful individuals that use law enforcement agencies wrongly to their own advantage and to the disadvantage of the journalists and media practitioners. And sometimes you also see some fine that come from AMCON and some other things to media stations, NBC to media stations, and you begin to ask a few questions. And a note of caution I will also put here is that how many people are actually trained as journalists? There's this.
I was coming to that. So
let me not preempt that. So from 1999 now, it is getting better, but there's so much to be done. We have to look for a way to make sure that an average journalist that suffers is well protected, and he can do what he's supposed to do without having to fear if his life or that of his family will be in danger.
Yeah. Now, you said earlier that a journalist is someone who knows his onion, and you're almost looking into that, because we have so many persons who parade themselves out there to be journalists. Now, with the advent of technology, we now have the online media, which is known as the social media. Now, you see all sorts of informations, even whether it is true, verified or unverified information. Everybody claims to be a journalist. Now, how do you define a journalist in this context of making sure that you get the right information, and people out there will look at information from you as authentic? Because we have so many of persons parading themselves as journalists.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominic. According to the recent, again, because before now, they say it should be someone that is trained, at least a diploma in mass communication, journalism, or related profession. But I think the NUJ, as a body that protects us, as a body that we are under, they are now even saying that you should be someone that has a first degree. A first degree should be the entry point, because right now I cannot say I'm a medical doctor, because there are some things I'm supposed to learn. Now, a journalist, you are the first gatekeeper. You are a professional. If you spot from a journalist, you will know that this person is a journalist. Because there are a lot of questions you ask yourself before you go out there. There's what we call unintended effects in communication journalism. This is what you want to say. This is what you end up saying. So if you look at your gatekeeping role as an individual, you will know what to put out there. But the recent introduction into the mix, where you have what you now call citizen journalism, everything, I don't want to use the word everything, that would be finality. Most things that come into Nigeria in form of either technology or advancement or development is mostly abused because of data is now a bit cheaper compared to what it used to be. Android phones, iOS, and some other phones are now available. People now have access to gadgets. A lot of people now compete with time. So the part where you have to verify, the part where you have to double check your source, the part where you have to look at the implication of what you are putting out. For example, I'm here now and I see someone beheading another person. Because I feel I want to be the first to break the news, I just carry the raw picture, raw images, or whatever it is. I throw it out for people to see. A lot of you have forgotten that man that is being beheaded, that man has family members. That man has people that will react in a particular way. So at the end of the day, one person was killed. You will realize that as a journalist, you have been able to put a situation out there where riots and instability will break out and more people will be killed. So today, as a journalist, if anything needs to be talked about as far as the position of the NUJ is concerned, I think I will really throw my weight behind them as a journalist, that you should have a first degree in your training so that you'll be able to know some of the rules, some of the gatekeeping rules that you have. You will not just be gate crashing, and we should look for a way. For example, you cannot remove quack all over the world. There's even a movie to that effect, Catch Me If You Can, where the guy faked to be almost everything: a doctor, a pilot, a bank manager, and stuff. He was even faking currencies and he was getting away with it. So you cannot remove fake, but we should try as much as possible as the umbrella body for journalists in the NUJ to work with law enforcement agencies to make sure that we are able to sieve what we have right now, to remove the shaft from the wheat, so that you have people that are trained in this regard. Sometimes I feel very, very bad. You go to talk to anybody, they all of them tell you I'm also a journalist, and I laugh. I said, it's not your fault. I'm the one that studied a course where almost everybody can come in if you have a degree in engineering. And sorry to our brother from the Benin Network Center that is a medical doctor and is taking over our studios right now. He's doing very, very well, but at the end of the day, you ask yourself that will he do it the way Dominic would do it? Will he do it the way I would do it? Will he do it the way that it will be acceptable to the profession? So we should try as much as possible to make sure that those that are trained, that have the prerequisite knowledge and experience and exposure, they should be the ones that will do this work of informing, so that at the end of the day, we will not end up realizing that what we are saying is giving us a different effect from what we wanted to say.
Yeah, but of course I know of the NIJ, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, where persons who are already in the profession but were not fully trained, like you said, maybe without a degree or diploma in mass communication, have to go to NIJ to get a formal training for journalism. Don't you think that also is a factor in this, in terms of training journalism, instead of we just having everybody, even the quacks out there claiming to be journalism? So what is the correlation between the NIJ and the requirements of entry profession?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in Nigeria and in most part of the world, sometimes humans will evolve. You discover yourself as you grow older. You realize that maybe because you were trying to get admission, you were trying to go to one school or the other, and you know, this normal peer pressure and comparison amongst your mates. A few of your people already are admitted into a higher institution, you are not admitted. So instead of going for medicine, you go for microbiology or you go for lab scientists, and you just want to become a graduate at all costs. A few people realize that the passion, what is in them, is not what they studied. So NIJ, with the diploma programs that you're talking about, they create an avenue for you to follow your passion. Maybe you're a medical doctor, like our brother in the Benin Network Center, and I know he must be listening now, and I'm wondering if I'm picking on him.
Of course, you're joining us at the time of the program.
Now, it's designed to brush you up, to make you have what it takes to practice. But the mistake that we are making, like I told somebody some time ago, that let me use the word very carefully now, quacks have risen to position of authority in some media houses. So some of the ethics, some of the norms have been thrown away. People that have this crash program naturally should not sensitive position in media houses or in places where journalists journalism is the main thing. For example, if I'm a medical doctor or if I'm an engineer that came into the media space either because of my passion or because I want to do one or two things, my work to a very large extent should still be subjected to you that is a professional, even if you earn lesser than me. But as far as the work, the professionality is concerned, you should still be the one that will check what I will do before it is pulled out there. So a lot of people will tell you that nurses sometimes do more work than the doctors. I don't know, but whatever the nurse will do, no matter how skilled, no matter how long he has been doing it, he will still subject that findings or whatever to the scrutiny of a medical doctor that is trained in that area. So the mistake we are making is people are having crash programs, and because of there is another issue that we might go into later if there is room for it. Politicians now owning media spaces and taking care of it. So brother, a sister with a diploma in journalism from NIG or any other school will just become the head of a media outfit, and some of these things, if it's not there, it's not there, and there's nothing you can do. So the mistake we are making is allowing those that are grounded in this profession to be the ones that decide what goes on air and what goes into the print and what goes into the media space. So if we can subject whatever they do to a professional that is well grounded in this profession, I think we will be better compared to what we have right now.
Now, if you look at before the last general election, we had issues where media organizations were being given files, being filed for either defamation or libel, so many issues. And it was so much during this administration. And so many persons felt the outgoing administration of President Muhammadu Buhari did not really parley well with the media in terms of the kind of policies or the kind of warnings they issue out to media houses during the election. I don't know whether you sense it that way also.
You see, what happened in that case, like I told you in my introductory remark, I told you that a few powerful people abuse proximity to power to do what they are not supposed to do as far as fundamental human rights and media freedom is concerned. Now, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari have not done badly as far as press freedom is concerned. But some people in the government, either actively involved or passively involved, they are the ones abusing the processes. And sometimes, let me tell you the problem with our constitution and some of the things that drives us as a country. It is so loose that sometimes it is subjected to interpretations that can go any way. You now have interpretations that are based on technicalities. You now have interpretations that are based on intention. For example, Dominic, don't be stupid. Now, this is an advice in a part of the world. That in Nigeria, as an African, they say, how can you tell him not to be stupid? That was rude, that was this. Another person forms opinion on that, and the person is now after me because of a statement that I made. So the interpretation of what constitutes libel, what constitutes defamation, what constitutes an attack on the government, and I told you before now, no government wants to be directly attacked. But if you want to fight this attack, if you want to seek a redress, how do you go about a redress? What we now see in some part of Nigeria right now is that some people pass through the shortcut and they abuse rights. They make sure that they cow you. Most of the time they know. Somebody told us some time ago in a gathering that we will do what we will do to you. At most, you will only shout. And we have been able to study in Nigeria that it will take maximum 9 days. After 9 days, that news will fizzle out and nobody will hear anything again. But I would have punished you and I will leave a mark in your body. You will not forget any time you remember that I existed. Now, so that is what is happening. So as far as the law is concerned, the government should make sure that either their cronies, their friends, or anybody involved does things in line with laid down laws that we have in this country. So the abuses that you are seeing, most of them are not directly from the government, but they are from the friends of the government and people that feel they can use the government to their advantage. And they are giving out, you will realize that they are subject to interpretation different interpretation. They say, if you look at the elephant, it is the part that you touch that you will describe. So I just said, Dominic, don't be stupid. Somebody feels I'm advising you, another person feels I'm insulting you, I'm causing chaos. So that is why we have what we have.
Let me find out if Evans is there to ask questions from your end. Evans, our guest, Festus, is still here with us. If you have questions from him, we will be glad to attend to your answer to your question. But let's look at these other troubling issues that is affecting journalists. According to the annual report from the Committee of Protect Journalists, which is an international organization, says in 2022 we had the highest numbers of journalists being killed or attacked worldwide, about 67 of them or thereabouts. In Nigeria also we had similar incidences in 2022. Let's back to 2021, where some journalists have been killed in the line of duty. Not just killed, there are some that have been attacked. Some have been jailed. We know the popular Jalingo, the Abba Jalingo, the Cross River journalist also that was in detention for a very long time. All these have been part of issues that we've been complaining about, that Nigerian journalists or medias are being gagged, being attacked by forces like you mentioned. Now, looking at the Nigerian scenario so far, what would you think has been the problem? Why do we have journalists being in the forefront and at the end you're being attacked? Because I have an experience also some time ago when I was covering a demolition where some army officers, they were sent there to enforce that demolition, called myself and my cameraman. I was made to sit on the floor and my tape was destroyed, and that was the first instance. I had another similar problem again with this task force that move around with the environmental agency in Abuja, where I was attacked for we were trying to film where they were burning some things they see somewhere in Jabi, and we were also attacked inside the staff boss of ITV. All these have been happening. I've been seeing nobody has been called to book as far as journalists who have been killed in the line of duty. The ones that happened in Abuja here, we know during the EndSARS protest in Lagos, we have a 20-year-old journalist, a young man was killed. We had one in Abuja here, a copper with one of our sister station here was killed. We've not seen any prosecution so far as far as all this are concerned.
Thank you very much. What we're having is technology coming. Technology is out there. Technology is doing so well. So some of the things that they tried to cover before now, technology is uncovering it. I spoke to one very senior military man, he retired now. He was telling me that what used to happen in the 90s, in the 80s, where the military will come and pick you and do one or two things to you, can no longer happen now, because as you are trying to do it, people are everywhere trying to capture the scene. Now, it all boils down, going back to your question now, it all boils down to what I said earlier. There is a lacuna. The police will tell you that our own ends in arresting, taking to court. All those 1,000,001 adjournments, that you have cases that will stay in the court for as long as 8 years. Justice delayed is justice denied. Some people will tell you it's not justice denied, but it's justice denied, because at the end of the day, even before the outcome will eventually show up, some people have decided to forget about it. For example, in this Abuja, I was robbed, and they were dilly-dallying. Those that robbed me were caught. I took them to where they should take them to. They confessed to the crime. About 5 years later, I can tell you, I did not recover toothpick from that thing. They were going to court until I just decided to forget about the case. Now, what we have is the laws that we have, most of the time, on the basis of technicalities, things are thrown out. So if the judges, if the courts in Nigeria, in line with the police, and there are some other things that you also see with the police, said nobody reported the case. If nobody reported the case, who is the prosecutor, who is the complainant, who is this? And in the real sense, a policeman witnessing anything is supposed to be, is a law enforcement agent. He's supposed to be, okay, this happened, that happened. So talking about journalists that were killed all over the world, technology. And for a few that cannot tolerate what the journalists will bring out, I told you before now that we are called muckrakers. We are the ones that go to bring out what people want to hide. So they feel that since there is a lacuna in the prosecution, let us kill him. Let us kill him in a very shady way that nobody will be able to pinpoint one or two things. And there is a problem we have in Nigeria that I think is, as it is right now, unique to us. We don't have a database. So you can commit a crime here, you can go as near as Nasarawa State behind us here, and you will live a normal life. There is no way to track you, there is no way to do anything. So if people know that whatever you do, there is a consequence, and no matter how long it takes, you will be tracked and you will be prosecuted, they would improve and they would do better. So what we have is the lacuna in prosecution and the prosecution processes we have in Nigeria, where a case can be adjourned for as long as, for example, the report that came out of the Lagos NSAS, whatever. I don't know where we are with that report now. You'll be surprised that that report will still be in one of these courts. People trying to prosecute one another. They will call, lawyers will not appear, nobody will prosecute, nobody will be defending, and they just throw it out. Sometimes they tell you lack of evidence or lack of merit and some of that. So if we remove all these technicalities and see protecting the journalists as protecting democracy and justice, a lot of good things will happen.
Let me bring in Evans from our Benin studio. Evans, please take it from here.
Dominic, AMS, good to know that Mr. Festus Ejirogene has hinted on so many things that I had in mind here. But let's look at one other aspect that is so very glaring. Because when we talk about freedom of the press, we are really not just hinging the whole thing on freedom in practicing, freedom in journalism, as it were. We also look at freedom as it relates to ownership factor. Now, there are insinuations that private-owned media organizations are heavily taxed. Now, the concern here is that should there be a special legislation to protect the interests of privately owned media organizations. Now, the idea is this: these privately owned media organizations, the ownership is perceived not to support the government of the day, the government at the center. So if that is the situation, don't you think, sir, that there should be a special legislation to protect, in this regard?
Thank you very much. And like as I was saying before now, that I've been a little hard on you this morning, a medical doctor, and coming into my space. But now, let me tell you what I feel in that area. Those that will give us this legislation, they will never comfort. It's like we are not supposed to be enemies of the society or enemies of the government or enemies of politicians. But the way it is, because there's so much to be hidden as far as governance is concerned in this part of the world, we are now like friendly foes. We are together, but we are not together. So if you, we have been talking about remuneration for journalists for the past, I can't remember, even before I graduated, people have been telling us that journalists are not well paid, they are not well protected, there is no basic laws that protect them and some other things. For example, Dominic here was telling us how he was humiliated and embarrassed. Nothing happened, he just stood up, and that is the end of the day. Nobody will be punished for that. So these people that are supposed to guarantee these ones for us, they are politicians that are in the legislative chambers, either at the House of Representatives or in the Senate, that will now be signed into law by the head of the executive, which is that the governor, the president, or whoever is in charge of doing that. They see it as arming their enemies to fight them. So if you are looking for a special legislation that will protect privately owned broadcast stations and media houses, it might not come very, very fast. For example, if you look at the Nigerian Press Council, because of the disagreement within the Professionals Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria and some other NUG and some other things, not being able to come together to agree, you realize that the Press Council is just there, not doing so much. And you also have some other professional bodies in this industry that they have not been able to do what they are set out to do. What does the government do? The government will just infiltrate the rank and file, infiltrate the leadership to make sure that the center does not hold. And very, very recently, even from the beginning, you realize that media owners, especially from the private sector, they do it mostly for political powers. Apart from the way some of them that were to propagate education and the gospel and some other things. Politicians are now media owners. You can no longer separate the interest of the politician, which is the media owner, from national interest or public interest. You as a journalist, you as a broadcaster, you as a practitioner in any level you are practicing, you consider the position of your owner in some things that you report. For example, if people will tell you that NTA is a public relation tool of the government, whether true or not, that is left to be discussed. So that interference is actually affecting, and we might not get the legislation as early as we want, but if we push harder, I think we'll be able to get something out of it.
Okay, all right, let's look at the NBC, which is an umbrella body of media organizations in Nigeria. I mean, they look at the affairs of media organizations in Nigeria. There are some talks that the NBC probably should not be necessarily, the leadership should not be appointed from the government of the day in order to maybe guarantee a kind of an independence of the NBC.
Yeah, I share in that sentiment too, but I think the problem with the NBC, if there is any, but you know, right now we have to be very, very open, is that who is appointed to head the NBC? What is the academic background of this person? Is this person a qualified person in the media space? Does he know what constitutes defamation? Does he know what constitutes libel? Does he know what constitutes disturbance to the media space? For example, I'm a journalist, I'm trained for that matter. If you now make me the chairman of NNA, either in Abuja here or Benin or in Nigeria, you will realize that some of my decisions will not conform with the norms in the medical profession. So I think the emphasis should be more on whoever is appointed should be those that are well grounded in the profession, that knows, that can differentiate fair comment from attack on the government. For example, if I say that NBC has not done well, I will say it based on the background information that I have. But if you are bringing somebody with due apologies now, somebody that studied even history is closed, somebody that studied engineering, or somebody that studied one very obscure, not related to media, the person will be acting based on the information that is available to him. At that level, any influence from either the government or those that are perceived to be powerful will be telling on the day-to-day running of that particular agency. So it is good that other media organizations and NUJ and some other bodies that superintend the media space have a say in who becomes the head of the NBC. But I don't think the government or the head of the executive appointing them is a big problem, as it were. If there are no influences, if there are no external influences and interference, nothing will happen. But we need professionals to man these places so that at the end of the day, they will be taking informed decisions based on internationally acclaimed or internationally acceptable norms and practices.
Okay, I'll ask my last question from Benin. Now, in Nigeria, there are two official languages. You have the English language, and of course, you have the French language. But you discover that the English language has surpassed the French language. It is probably in a very rare official occasion that you get to hear the French language and all that. Now, it's also having effects even in the media. Most media organizations, they don't put into cognizance that the French language should be a tool for communication, bearing in mind that French is an official language, just as we have the English as an official language in Nigeria. Don't you think that media organizations should begin to make, ways for imbibing the French language in their communication?
Thank you very much for that question. If you studied mass communication mass communication, broadcasting, or those things, you will do language. And depends on the part of Nigeria where you studied. Like some of us that studied in the southwestern part of Nigeria, we had to study French, which is basic. If you don't pass, you will not graduate, and Yoruba that later came as an addition because of where we were. And as at that time, I know that those in Enugu, UNN, and whatever will also study the French and the Igbo language. But what I will tell you is a failure on the part of the government, if you ask me, really, because we are surrounded by francophone countries. And whenever I travel out of this country to most of these francophone countries around us, you will realize that there is hardly anybody in the media space that is a French-speaking person that cannot scratch English. They can communicate, they can do one or two things in English. But if you come to Nigeria this way, you realize that you have seasoned journalists that cannot even greet properly in French because there is no emphasis to continue. The last time I did anything serious in French was when I was in school and I needed it to graduate. I knew if I don't pass, I'm not going to graduate. And since I graduated so many years ago, there's nothing that is putting pressure to make me want to go learn further. Some of the times there are some opportunities I would have gotten because I don't speak French. I don't go for it. And as it is in Nigeria right now, the French is not giving me anything that looks like an advantage, except if I want to go outside the country. So the way we insist that we do general studies the first and second year in our universities, we can also insist as a government, putting it heavily on our curriculum, that we study French so that we'll be able to survive in nations around us. So if the Ministry of Education, the federal ministry, state ministries, and that of local education authority should go the extra mile to make sure that from the kindergarten where people pick languages and how to speak, we introduce this French, and as you are growing as a child, you get into it, and as a student from your elementary school to the secondary to the tertiary institution, even to postgraduate, if there are some things that you will learn, you will do better. But the government have to make sure, not really media houses, because the media houses will definitely work with what they have. And by the time you say you cannot work here if you don't study French or if you cannot speak French, and 300 people, you did not get one that can speak, you will employ the one that you see.
All right, thank you so much. Over to you, to Dominic now.
I thank you, Evans, for your contribution from our Benin Networks Center. Well, I think we've done for today the International Day or World Press Freedom Day as it is. I don't know, idea special celebrations for today as a journalist that you know about, apart from the normal press briefing we are going to hear, because we know we just marked the Labor Day and the workers were out there. I know sometimes journalists join also. The AUJ is also part of the NLC, but from our own end, I won't be searching any special events today.
I must be very frank with you. The work is so engaging that you don't even remember. I think it was the president's statement from his media aide, Femi Adesina, that made me remember that May 3rd is World Press Freedom Day. It's there, but no, it's like the way men forget their birthday, apart from a few that remember. So I don't think there will be anything special, but you still have some NGOs, non-governmental organizations, non-profit making organizations that will organize one or two things, but they are very, very minute. I don't also think that medical association and some other associations, they do something national. But we that amplify what others say, you would expect that we will do so much to make sure that we are well grounded and we are able to disseminate the need to follow some of the things that we preach. But you know, the job, like you're talking about press freedom, I know you should have been awake like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and I don't know when you're going to be here. So where will you have time for celebrating?
No, why I asked that question, because from the very beginning we stated it here that we are not being celebrated. So I felt maybe there's a celebration.
We celebrate ourselves. We don't remember to celebrate ourselves.
Thank you so much for your time, Festus. I'm not from that side, so I'm always finding it difficult
to get
that name.
For my name.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you so much for your time.